Hi there, just want to give you a little additional research tip with regards to finding information within the bottomless World Wide Web, specifically around a term that's been tossed around by a few people, especially I've heard it from Dean Clifford, where he mentions that if you're not doing a function of government, then you are not subject to any of the laws. Interesting concept, didn't really have the evidence of it to back it up, so I went to find out about it. And I went to CanLii and put in function of government in quotation marks, which keeps it specific to that entire term, so I don't just come up with stuff that has government and function in it all by themselves. And you get a whole bunch of different cases here, and you can see that there's lots and lots and multiple pages of it. And what I do is I read the little gray boxes here to find out what it says about the case when you have that term, to give it some context and decide if it's something that you may be interested in. One of the ones that caught my eye was this one here, the citizenship and immigration, and I decided to have a look at that, and it's an interesting case. The case is about a fellow who was immigrated into Canada after World War II, and part of the immigration process, I suppose, is to tell the truth about where you come from and what you've done and all that sort of thing. And it turns out that apparently he was potentially a guard at one of the concentration camps during World War II and didn't report it during the immigration process. So somebody is challenging his status because he lied in order to get access, or that's the assertion anyways. So when you click on, when you do a search like this and you click on the link, you end up getting this little identifier box up here, which tells you what search phrase is a part of this, and you can go right to it on the page by clicking the arrow, and it'll take you right to where it is. You can also scroll, of course, but this is the fast way. And the function of government's here in the context of this paragraph. You can read the paragraph and see if it's related to anything you're looking at. So this fellow was being prosecuted for, they were trying to get him out of the country because they were trying to prove he lied. And one of the ways that they were proving that he lied was they got a hold of the lists, what they called the records from the camp, and his name or a name like his was on it as one of the guards. And they called them business records. So the question before the court, one of them anyways, was, does the transfer list constitute business records that are admissible under Section 30 of the CEA? And the CEA is the Canada Evidence Act. So in order to bring in evidence, one of the ways to find out if it's allowable is to look at the Canada Evidence Act about that type of evidence and so on. So we'll look at that in a minute. So this paragraph 16 deals with the question before the court initially. Was whether those SS or police officers who prepared these records were part of a business, which I find interesting that the Canadian government's evaluating whether the way the Nazis ran their concentration camps were a business. And so they go, for the purposes of Section 30 of the Canada Evidence Act, the term business has an expansive meaning and includes any activity or operation carried on by any government or by any other body or authority performing a function of government. So here's the reference to a function of government. And they were trying to determine whether part of the records were allowable because there were from some agency doing a function of government. And they did decide that it was a function of government, the camps, and therefore the records were from a function of government, therefore they were admissible under the Canada Evidence Act. And that was that particular outcome there. So let's go look at the Canada Evidence Act. Scroll up the top here. CanLii has it, and there's lots of stuff in here with regards to how evidence is brought into court cases in Canada. And obviously you have the title on the application. This part applies to all criminal proceedings and to all civil proceedings and other matters, wherever respecting which Parliament has jurisdiction. So wherever the federal government has jurisdiction in a proceeding, the Canada Evidence Act is a part of the process to determine what type of evidence and how it's to be brought in. So if you're in any type of process against the federal Crown, this is an important act for you to have a look at with regards to evidence. So we were looking for Section 30 of the Act that was referenced in that case. Well, what is Section 30? Section 30 has a title. And remember, the titles don't form part of the Act, they're just there for convenience or reference only. But it's about business records to be admitted into evidence. So part of it, I guess, is about what is a business record and how do you determine a business record, and then if it's defined as a business record, then it can be admitted into evidence. So let's look at section 30, definitions, because that's one of the first place to look at after you find a section is the definitions, because the words used in the section have sometimes specific meanings that you need to know before you start doing the work of reading the section. So the first definition is business, and it is in this section, which means only in this section, not the whole act, not every other act in Canada, but only this act regarding business records under the Canada Evidence Act. So business is redefined from its normal and ordinary meaning specifically for Canada Evidence Act to be any business, profession, trade, calling, manufacture, or undertaking of any kind carried on in Canada or elsewhere, whether for profit or otherwise, including any activity or operation carried on or performed in Canada or elsewhere by any government, by any department, branch, board, commission, or agency of any government, by any court or other tribunal, or by any other body or authority performing a function of government. Quite the mouthful, absolutely. So any business, okay? They're going for everybody. Remember in that the case back here, it said it has an expansive meaning. All right, they've gone and they've expanded the meaning from its normal and everyday meaning to any business, okay? Undertaking of any kind, where carried on in Canada or elsewhere. Oh, so anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. Whether for profit, what? Or otherwise, so non-profit as well. Any activity or any operation carried on or performed in Canada or elsewhere by any government, etc., and all these other things. So part of Dean's assertion is that when you use a social insurance number, or the presumption that you're using a social insurance number, that you are acting as either, let's see, an agency of a government by using the number, or any other body or authority performing a function of government. So these definitions here, all this list of things, any one of them performing a function of government. So if they make a presumption that you are using a federal ID number, then they are making the presumption that you are a body or some type performing a function of government. Therefore, you have a business under the Canada Evidence Act, and therefore, because you have a business under the Canada Evidence Act, you have business records to be admitted into evidence. So if they are issuing a information to obtain a search warrant, they make the presumption that it's a business under Canada, and that what they're looking for is records, and they are going to seize those records in order to be entered into evidence under the presumption that you are performing a function of government. Therefore, what they have seized falls under the definition of a business and business records under the Canada Evidence Act. That seems to be the game that they're playing. There's lots of other cases that decide or discuss this. Here's another one, Supreme Court of Canada, with regards to trust stuff. So an interesting aspect of how business does not have a general meaning under the Canada Evidence Act, but it has an expanded and special meaning. Any court case that they are using it with, they are using this definition, and it's important to know the difference because they want to define those as records of a business, and that business being performed for performing a function of government. Food for thought.